Okay, so we're talking about the perfect human rebirth, which is what we need in order to realize our potential for enlightenment. And we saw before that being born in any of the non-human states is far from conducive. And even when born as a human, there are more conditions against being able to meet and practice the Dharma than there are for. So those were classified as the eight unfree states. On the positive side, there are the 8 endowments, or the 8 richnesses, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche calls them, which is a literal translation from the Tibetan richness, jowa. So again, the first of these is being born human. We saw, the 8 freedoms indicate that, so that's kind of the basis or the start. That's the first richness, being born human. And the second is called being born in the center of a religious country. So, according to Rinpoche, the religious country can be defined in 2 ways. One is that one is geographically, that is to be born in or around Bodh Gaya or northern India, generally speaking, the area where the Buddha lived and taught. Geographically, that's, India was a religious country, and its center was wherever the Buddha was or had been, or where his teachings, where his monks lived. So you're starting the chat again?
Yeah. I just put some information in the chat.
Yeah, there was a lot of good stuff in the last one. Does that kind of disappear forever?
There is a way to memorialize it, but I'm not really sure how, but I'm just grabbing it from my notes.
Yeah, anyway, there were some good links there.
Thanks.
Yeah, so these 10 richnesses are sometimes explained a little bit differently, but that looks more or less standard. Central religious country, so it could be geographically or dharmically. A religious country is defined as a place where the lineage of the ordinations still exists or continues, or can be found. So that is, there need to be 5 fully ordained, usually they say monks. I think it would, well, the situation with nuns is a little controversial for some people. It said there were no fully ordained nuns, Gelongmas, in Tibet, because the lineage of the Gelongma, the fully ordained nun, had disappeared or died out in Tibet. So there are, in terms of monastic ordination, there are these 2 levels. There's a novice, where the monks or nuns, novice monks and nuns, take 36 vows. So that ordination existed. So all the nuns in Tibet were novice nuns. And I don't know when the Gelongma lineage was supposed to have died out, but Bhikshuni. And then there are these fully ordained monks and nuns. The novices have 36 vows, male and female, and the fully ordained monks have 253 vows, and the fully ordained nuns have 364. But as I said, the lineage was supposed to have died out. Now, And in Thailand, nuns couldn't even be ordained as novices. Maybe that's changed recently. There was one Buddhist university professor, woman professor in Thailand, Chatsuman Kabil Singh, I think was her name. And she kind of, I don't want to say agitated, but, the Buddhist hierarchy is pretty well entrenched in Thailand. But I think she might have shaken things up so that nuns could now be ordained as novices, but I'm not sure about that. There's an organization called Women's Buddhist Organization. Anyone know the name? Can't believe it, I don't remember it. Anyway, she was one of the prime movers, Chatsuman, Professor Chatsuman, and Western nun Karma Lekshi Tsomo. She was at Kopan, she was at the 5th course. And then she studied in Dharamsala at the dialectic school for a while. And she was one of the prime advocates for restoring the full nun ordination in Tibetan Buddhism. Sakyadhita, the Daughters of the Buddha. And I think they meet annually. Maybe it's probably virtual these days. And a lot of the nuns, a lot of the Western novice nuns, Tibetan novice nuns, Westerners, went to Thailand, where the Chinese Bhikshuni ordination still exists. And so they were ordained as full nuns in the Chinese tradition. And there's a lot of lobbying of His Holiness to sort of restore the full nun ordination for Tibetan Buddhism, but he said it's not up to him. There has to be a council of the elders, and there's a whole lot of things supposed to happen. So I'm not quite sure where that is. But the center of religious country, dharmically, is where the lineage of the ordinations still exists, whether it's the novice ordination or the full ordination. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche said that the definition of whether the Dharma is alive or is living or alive or viable or can be said to exist in a place is whether the lineage of the ordinations is there. There'll be time when maybe all that's left of the Dharma is books in libraries, and there are no practitioners or not many practitioners. So even if there's a library that contains every Dharma book and text that was ever written and published, that doesn't qualify as being, that place doesn't qualify as being in a religious country. The lifeblood of Buddhism, of the Dharma, is the lineage of the ordinations. And that probably include Pratimoksha ordination, the lay ordination as well. So we've been born human, as far as I can tell, and we're in a place where the lineage of the ordination still exists. Even if it didn't exist, here in the States, we could go somewhere where it still exists and be in that religious country, but it's possible to get ordained here. There are enough fully ordained monks and nuns to give the ordination. So at the moment, this is considered a religious country too. So we are very fortunate. We've been born in a place like this where, if we want, we can take the 5 precepts or 36 or 200-300, whatever it is. And the third richness is literally being born with perfect organs. That is the opposite of the seventh freedom. So it means all our senses are intact. We can hear, we can see, and there are a number of reasons for this. In the Buddha's time, maybe it's a little more relaxed now, but there were quite there were restrictions as to who could get ordained and live in a monastery, and it was generally people who had some serious disability were disqualified from becoming ordained and living in the monastery. And because life, the life in a monastery, as you might imagine, is fairly well disciplined, and the monks have different monks have different jobs they have to do and responsibilities they have to take. And if there was no restriction as to who could be allowed to become a monk in a monastery, then the families would, I don't want to use the word dump, but put any family members that they wanted to get rid of in a nice way into the monastery, and then the monks would be sort of forced to take care of them, whether they were mentally disturbed or physically challenged in one way or another. So I don't think that restriction is quite as strict now as it was back then, and there are many different ways of there are many ways people with disabilities can live a pretty normal life. So but that was one of the reasons that not having physical or mental impairment of any kind was considered a richness, an endowment, something that allowed you to practice Dharma. And of course, if you're deaf, for example, I think in the text it says free from being deaf or foolish is, I think, the literal translation of that seventh freedom, and that spills over here. So if you're, foolish, if you can't read or if you can't memorize and you can't understand the explanations, then it's much more difficult to practice Dharma than if you don't have that problem. Also, an important part of the tradition is oral transmission. So you see, there's all these lamas always giving what's called the lung. Lung is the Tibetan word for prana, or for the wind energy, the energy that the thing, I call it a thing. The wind is what the mind rides on, what carries the mind through the body. So as we know, there are all these psychic channels in the body, up to 72,000. So there are central channel and right and left channels, and then there's these chakras, these sort of wheels where psychic channels spread out, and there are like 8 from here and 32 from here and 16 from there and so on. And then they branch out sort of like a capillary network. There's psychic channels, this is not physical. And the mind travels through these channels, through the body, riding on the wind. It's the wind carries the consciousness. So they're, connected that way. And so that's lung, wind. So the oral transmission, the lung, is the breath or the holy breath of the teacher who has received the transmission of a teaching that can be traced all the way back to the Buddha himself. So the Buddha gave teachings and his disciples heard them, they went in the ear, and then the disciples passed them on through their mouth, to their disciples' ear, and so on. There are a lot of transmissions that have come down to the present day, and it's considered an important blessing to receive the oral transmission of certain texts. There are some lamas who've given transmission of the entire Kangyo, the whole 108 volumes of the Buddha's teachings. Maybe the Tengyur also, the Indian commentaries on the Buddha's teachings, which are 227 volumes. I don't know if I've heard of that being given, the transmission of the Tengyur. Kangyo, there's some lamas that actually, once if they've given that transmission, if they hold the transmission, they've given it, they're called Kangula, Kangyo Lama, something like that. Our teacher, Geshe Tsulga, who was the resident teacher here in Boston until he passed away 10, 11 years ago, Geshe Tsulga, his teacher, Geshe Losang Tupten, who was the abbot of Sarah back in the early 80s, and then went to Australia to Buddha House in Adelaide. He was also called Kangyo Lama because he had received and given the transmission of the entire Kangyo at one point. And Geshe Tsulga, before he passed away, gave us a transmission of the perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines. So anyway, the lamas are always giving oral transmissions. If you're deaf, you can't receive that. So it doesn't mean you can't practice Dharma. It just means you can't practice Dharma to the, every aspect of the Dharma. And, and if you're physically challenged one way or another, you often in Tibet particularly, you couldn't go climb mountains up to some yogi cave who was giving an important transmission or special teachings and stuff like that. So we're fortunate we don't have any disabilities that prevent us from practicing Dharma to the full. That's the third one. Then the fourth one is not having committed any of the 5 negative actions of immediate retribution, or something they call the 5 heinous 5 heinous crimes, 5 heinous negativities, heinous. Samyanga in Tibetan, it's the 5 without border, literally, Samyanga. What it means is if you've created any of these 5 negative actions, killing your mother, killing your father, killing an arhat, drawing blood from a Buddha, or creating schism in the Sangha community. Those are 5 extreme negative actions. And although they can be purified, they're very hard to purify. And if they're not purified, if you've done one or more of those, in your next life, you immediately get reborn in the hell realms without any other life intervening. So, you don't get born when you die in this life. This life finishes, you don't get reborn as a dog and then go to the hell realm to experience the karma of having created one of those 5 extreme negative actions. You don't get born anything in between. As soon as this life finishes, you're immediately born in the hell realms as a result of that karma. It's so negative, so strong. So also, if you've created any of those 5 negative actions, you're disqualified from getting ordained as a monk or nun. There's something else, but I forget. So that's, anyway, the fourth one is not having created one of those. So, you could say that's freedom from having done that, but it's considered an endowment or a richness, not having done that. And the fifth one is having faith in the three baskets of the teachings. The Buddha's teachings are divided into these three groups, the Tripitaka, Deno Sum, Tibetan, three baskets, the Vinaya, which is the teachings on the monastic discipline, Sutra basket, Sutra Pitaka, which is basically teachings on concentration, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka, which is the basket of or collection of teachings on wisdom. So having faith in the three baskets of the teachings is the fifth endowment, fifth richness. The first time I went to Laudo, to the place where Lama Zopa Rinpoche's previous life was, where he meditated in a cave, and they said, as I mentioned, Rinpoche was kind of renowned for not sleeping when we first met him. And as I said, I never saw him lie down, except for that time he was very sick for years. So in his previous life, he was said to have, the last 20 years of his life, he's said to have passed beyond the need for sleep. That's how it's put. And so you can see how that mind that didn't need sleep for 20 years, when it continues into this life, can fairly quickly come back up to that level. Kind of a superpower, I think, not having to sleep. Imagine how much more TV you could watch if you didn't have to sleep, or how much more Dharma you could practice, I should say, really. So first time I went up there was 73, and it was after the fourth course. And I think there were 6 of us went up to Laudo that year. And we'd been there for about a month, I think, when I started to turn yellow and realized I had hepatitis. And just before 6 weeks before that happened, I'd been in Kathmandu, and some of my friends had been at the fourth course, of my Australian friends. And so I went to see them in their hotel before I left, and they were all sitting around, they were all yellow with hepatitis. And so I made the mistake of sharing a joint with them because with my profound medical knowledge, I thought, well, once someone's turned yellow, that means they've gone, they're only infectious before you're only infectious with hepatitis A. You're only infectious for a week or something, and then when you turn yellow, you're not shedding virus anymore. You're post-infectious. So I thought it was safe, but when I turned yellow, my medical knowledge increased a little bit by realizing that wasn't a strict criterion. So and I felt terrible, and we were there were 2, 3, 4, 5 of us living in Rinpoche's house, which was actually about 15 minutes away, 15 minutes a little bit down and west of the Laudo Gompa, the monastery that he'd built after he came back from Tibet and India. You know his story, I'm sure. So so every day we had to walk up and down. And, my girlfriend, who was a nurse, the one I was traveling with, and we set up a medical clinic in the Gompa, and we used to treat, and the Kopan monks, in those days, the Kopan monks, there were 20 or 30 of them, the young monks, they used to go up and down. They used to go up to Laudo in the summer when it was quite hot and rainy in Kathmandu, and in the winter when it was cold and was hard to get food up in the mountains, they went back down to Kopan, to the monastery. So that went for 2 or 3 years until there became too many monks, because the numbers increased. Now there's like 800 of them, 400 monks and 400 nuns. So at that time, 50 years ago, there were like 20 or 30 monks. And the little ones were flown up to Lukla, and then there was like a one-day walk up to Laudo from there. With the older ones, the bigger ones, they walked all the way from Kathmandu. It took about 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks to walk up to Laudo. But that was the thing for the first 2 or 3 years. So we used to have this clinic, and we'd any of the monks were sick or any of the local Sherpa people would come, and then one of the others, Gareth Sparham, Bill knows Gareth. He was he was up there with us. He was teaching English to the monks, and there was an American couple, Dick and Meredith. Dick, I don't know can't remember what Meredith did. Dick was kind of the manager. He fixed broken things and sort of did maintenance around the place. And there's one nun, Jamyang Wongmo. She wrote the book called The Laudo Lama. She went up into a cave and she did retreat. So I think that was the 6 of us. So when I got sick, I could hardly move out of my room, let alone walk up to the monastery or not. So I stayed home, and then that's when I started editing the notes that we'd taken from the 3rd and the 4th courses, Rinpoche's teachings. We took a lot of notes, and it was before we started recording and transcribing. And when I was editing the notes, one thing I understood was how much of Rinpoche's teachings were missing just by taking notes. So after that, we started, from the 5th course onwards, we started recording every word he said. And that continues to this day. Recording and transcribing. And first we published it locally, and now we publish it in books such as this. So, so that was one thing. So I was editing these teachings on the perfect human rebirth, and on these 3 freedoms, being born in the center of a religious country, which is defined as a place where you can take ordination, and having perfect organs, which means you're not disqualified from getting ordained, and not having committed one of the 5 extreme negative actions, which also means you can get ordained. So I was like, well, I've got those 3, and the main benefit of those 3 is that you can get ordained. Maybe I should become a monk. So that was kind of a scary thought for a new Buddhist. Anyway, but I thought about it, and so then I thought, well, I'll make a list of pros and cons. So, a reasonable list of pros, and I didn't have any cons. I wasn't married. Marie was my girlfriend. In fact, when I became a monk, she became a nun, Yeshikado, and here we are. What year is this? 22, January. 48 years she's been a nun. We were ordained January 74. Is that right? 48 years. It's amazing. I only lasted 12 years. But anyway, so one day when the others were up in the Gompa and I was yellow in my room editing teachings, and there was a knock at the door, and there was this old Sherpa guy, and he had stuff to sell. And amongst the stuff he was selling was a set of really beautifully made robes. The lower garment, the shemtab, kind of a skirt thing, and then the zen, the kind of shawl, and a couple of things that went underneath, made out of yak wool, really top quality. So I bought them. And I was thinking, well, I haven't decided to become a monk. I haven't even got permission. I haven't asked permission. But if I don't, I can sell them in Kathmandu for a profit. So that was my thinking. So then Yeshe Kadro comes back from running the clinic up in the monastery in the evening, and says, "Hi, how are you feeling?" "Oh, a bit better, not too bad." I says, "Guess what I did today?" She's like, "What?" I said, "I bought a set of robes." She was like, "You what?" So I said, "Don't worry, nothing's decided. I can always sell them." So in fact, I finished up wearing them for quite a few years. They're very heavy. And when I went to India, I don't know what I did with them. I might have given them away to somebody else. I can't really remember now. I didn't sell them. But when we got back to Kathmandu and we did the 5th course, and a bunch of people came over from Dharamsala who'd been studying at the library, John Landau and Thupten Pende and Thupten Wongmo and Cherki, a whole bunch of Geshe Ngawandage students who'd been studying at the Tibetan library they'd heard about this Kopan course, so they came to check it out. And by the end of the course, 10 of us had decided to get ordained. We asked Lama, got permission, and then so in January 74, we went to Bodh Gaya for His Holiness giving the Kala Chakra initiation, and then after that we got ordained as novice monks and nuns by His Holiness Ling Rinpoche. So, what turned my mind was this teaching on perfect human rebirth, editing Rinpoche's teachings and thinking of the benefits of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th richness. So the 5th one is you're having devotion to the teachings. So, if we have all these 5, so far so good. These are called personal endowments, the 5 personal endowments. And then the other 5 are called the 5 circumstantial endowments, although they're not always broken into those 2 groups. So the 6th richness, or the 6th endowment, is being born, how do they put it? Being born at a time when the Buddha has descended. So technically what that means is that the Buddha has been born. So let me do the next one and then it'll be more clear. So the Buddha has descended, the Buddha has appeared on earth, but, he's like 3 months old, he's a year old, he's 15, he's doing archery and fending off all these girlfriends that his parents are introducing him to, not teaching. He's 20, he's 26, then he decides to leave the monastery, leave the palace, and go in search of the truth. So then he does 6 years of austerities and all this stuff. Finally, he gets enlightened. So from the time he was born until the time he gets enlightened, that's the time the Buddha has descended. But it's, what do you call it? Can't find the word I'm looking for. I think that what I was thinking is Pyrrhic victory, but that doesn't quite work. There's a downside to the Buddha having descended because he hasn't started teaching yet. And there's actually a story that after when he was a child, maybe even a baby, there was a sage came to his father's palace, or was passing by or something, someone who was renowned for his clairvoyance. So the king, asked him to come in and have a look at this newborn child and make a prediction. So the old man, the sage, looked at baby Prince Siddhartha, and then he started weeping. And the king was like freaked out. Like, what? What's the matter? What's wrong? Was something wrong with the child? Why are you crying? He said, no, it's not like that. He said, when this child grows up, he's going to be a great teacher. And so the father was a bit relieved, but he said, so why are you crying? He said, because I'm going to die before he starts teaching, so I'm going to miss out on his teachings. So that's the Buddha's descendant. So then the seventh one is being born when the teachings have been revealed, or when the Buddha has started teaching. So that's after the Buddha's given the teaching on the Four Noble Truths. So clearly we are born after that time, 2,600 years after that time. So we have that endowment. So we're at a time when not only is the Buddha descended, but the Buddha has actually started teaching, giving teachings. So we're beneficiaries of that endowment. 7, 8. So the eighth one is being born at a time when the complete teachings still exist. So there are two types of teaching. Like I mentioned before, there's kind of the written, there's the word, like in the books, like in libraries. So, that's okay as far as it goes. But if that's all you've got, it's, you wouldn't really have anyone to guide you in your practice. You may not even know how to practice or what to do. But there's the teaching of the word, the oral teachings or the written teachings, and then there's the realized teachings. That is, the teachings exist as realizations within the mind of experienced practitioners. So these, so when someone, like His Holiness or like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, someone who has realized the teachings gives teachings, then there's enormous blessing from that person's kind of, realized wisdom. Whereas if someone who hasn't realized the teachings, maybe, like me, like someone knows a few words, can maybe skate on the surface a little bit, but it's nothing like getting teachings from someone who has the realizations. So, where eventually there won't be any realized masters, realized teachers around. And so then the people who are born after that time will not be able to have this richness, this endowment of being born at a time when the complete teachings, the teachings of the word and the teachings of the realizations still exist. So the ninth one is being born at a time when there are, this is explained differently sometimes, but what Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, you find it different in different books, I think. I can't remember the different explanations, but this one is when being born at a time when there are followers of the Buddha's teachings, when there's a sangha, when there are Dharma friends, people with whom you can practice, people who can explain things you don't understand to you, people you can do group retreat with, people who can support you in your practice, feed your cat when you go into retreat, whatever. I guess they don't really have to be followers, but anyway, you get the idea. So that's another richness when there's this. Your practice has support from others. And then the final one, the 10th one, is receiving teachings from a compassionate guru and material support from a benefactor. So, of course, we need teachings. And if we have a learned and compassionate teacher, then we'll get whatever teachings we want, whatever teachings we need at the right time. But if we don't have support, if we have to go out and work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, then we don't really have time for study or practice, no matter how many teachings from a compassionate teacher we've received. So it's important to have also that material support, if we go into retreat and we're in a cave somewhere, then we need someone to cook for us, to bring us food, to go to the market for us, and so on. The next year, 74, I went to Laudo again. So we got the initiation from His Holiness, and that was the first time most of us had taken tantric vows. So then we got we got ordained, and we had this little monastic community, International Mahayana Institute, IMI. That we started that. In fact, I was the first director. So Lama had set this up in December 73, before we went to Bodh Gaya. The 10 of us who were going to get ordained, and there was a couple of others around who'd been ordained, Anila Ann and Sister Max, Annie Max. She lives in Santa Fe. You guys know her? Mummy Max. She was there, and Jumper Sangpo, Jumper Shaneman, you know him, he lives in Mexico. He gives Yamantaka teachings every Sunday morning. He did a 3-year Yamantaka retreat up in above Tushita in Dharamsala, where Geshe Topton and all the ascetic Geshis used to retreat. He did a 3-year retreat. He was very close to His Holiness Ling Rinpoche, previous life. He was the first monk. He was Lama Yeshe's first monk. He was ordained in 1970. So a bunch of us, so Lama got everyone together and said, we need, now there's this explosion, the Sangha explosion, we need an organization, a Western Sangha organization. So he founded the International Mahayana Institute. So when we came back from Bodh Gaya, after getting ordained, we started trying to establish a Western monastic community. They gave us the old house at Kopan, which is kind of down the back, which is where the Lamas first lived when they moved up there in 69. So we did puja every morning, and then two of us would cook for the others every day. There was like once every 2 weeks, there was a kind of a roster where you had to cook for the others. And we did puja every morning, we did puja at lunch, and we did Mahakala in the evening as a community. And we studied, we got teachings from, not immediately, he wasn't there, from Geshe Jumpa Gyatso, who went to Italy after a while. and we worked on publishing and editing the Lama's teachings. And we set up our own little publishing operation there at Copan. Can't remember why I'm telling the story. Anyway, we got supported, we got teachings, and we had our Dharma community. So we had these last two richnesses. So the way we meditate on these is, we don't really have time to lead a meditation now, it takes a little while, but so the way, one way we were shown to do it is, when you're going to meditate on these 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses, you think, since beginning this time, I've been circling in cyclic existence, dying, reborn, and most of the time, I've been in cyclic existence, I've been in the lower realms. And of the lower realms, most of the time in the lower realms, most of my time in the lower has been spent in the hell realms, where the suffering is unimaginably unbearable. So again, the way to meditate on the lower realms is not to, have teachings and explanations of what the hells look like, with this kind of environment and this kind of torture and this happening and these protectors and this and that, which is all how it's explained, is not to think of that and be looking at it from a distance and thinking, oh, the poor things, but to actually try to remember one's life, because most of one's previous lives have been spent in the hell realms. But it's just, this terrible suffering that we immediately, as soon as we have the chance, we kind of shut it out. But to visualize yourself in that particular hell realm, and as I said before, there are 8 hot hells, there are 8 cold hells, there are 4 neighboring hells. So there are detailed explanations of each of those 20, and to think, imagine being in that environment and just understanding how impossible it is to practice Dharma. There are no teachings there anyway. There are no teachers. There are no books. They burn up. There's, and it's just constant unbearable suffering for eons, vast period of time. All you can do is suffer. And the only thing in your mind is, I wish it would stop. I want to get out of here. But there is just no hope. So it's a completely hopeless situation. You never see anybody getting out. There's no escape, no matter where you look. So how impossible it would be to practice Dharma. Then you think, even if I'm sitting here like this, and someone has a burning stick of incense and pokes me in the arm with the red hot tip of the incense, meditate, practice Dharma, even that tiny little bit of heat, it's impossible to practice. So how impossible would it be when the whole, in this vast burning red hot ground and everything's in flames and your body, karmically, your body's in incredible pain, but you don't die because the karma is for you to live and experience that. There's no way out by dying. So we're lucky in the human realm because as soon as the suffering gets intense, we pass out or we die. Our body can't take it. So that's good. It's better than living and in the heat and the burning. I mean, some people you see having incredible pain, incredible suffering. There's a friend of mine who had surgery, I think three and a half years ago. She had pelvic surgery, and ever since that has had unbearable, excruciating pain in the lower part of her body, almost without respite, no matter what she takes. And it's just incredibly, for 3 years she's had nonstop suffering and doesn't have the karma to find a solution or a doctor to help or a drug that will stop the pain. And she's tried everything. And now she's, this close to killing herself. But that's nothing compared to the hell realms. But, for us, it's something. So, she knows lamas and she had advice from many lamas. Now no one's helped her. She completely lost faith in the Dharma because, this teacher says this, another one says that, and nothing's helped. So, how fortunate I am not to have been reborn, not to have been born in the hells in this life, where it's impossible to practice Dharma, but to have received this human rebirth where I can practice Dharma. And then you think, so since beginning of this time, most of the time I was born in the hell realms, but then when I wasn't, I was reborn as a hungry ghost. And then you think of all the sufferings of the hungry ghosts, internal, external, this and that, hindrances of food and so forth. I think there are, I haven't seen a clear description. There are 36 types of preta, 36 types of hungry ghost. I know the jewel ornament of liberation gives a little more detail than liberation in the palm of your hand, Gampopa's text. But anyway, there's, all these different sufferings of hunger and thirst and heat and cold and that the hungry ghosts have to undergo. So then we think, well, even, if I miss a meal, just one meal, for the next few hours, all I can think of is how hungry I am. When can I eat? It's like if I miss lunch or something, waiting for dinner, or is there anything around I can snack on? Even just 2 or 3 hours of hunger we find unbearable. So then if someone says, if you've done a nyungne, you have an idea. Anyone done nyungne? Nobody's done nyungne? Come on, you guys. So on the second, do you know what it is? The 2-day fasting retreat. So on the second day, you don't eat and you don't drink, not even a drop. You can't even clean your teeth in case some water goes down. So for 24 hours, no eating, no drinking. So then you know what it means to be hungry. And that's part of the practice, to train our mind But not only that, but then you have to spend all day doing prostrations and meditating on the you do 4 sessions a day of the Nyungne sadhana. So yeah, I'm surprised no one down there has organised it. You guys are such great practitioners.
It is something that's missing.
Yeah, we'll invite Mary Colony over from Crestone, or Mary. You know Mary?
Yes,
She
I know of her. Yes,
she's a great Nyungne, experienced Nyungne leader.
I'll suggest it.
Yeah, I know she might be in a retreat now, but whatever. There are other people, you know. Venerable Amy can lead it, you know. So you think of times you've been really hungry, and then someone says, "Don't worry about that. Just sit down and meditate. You know, practice Dharma." You can't. Your mind is always going to the kitchen, you know. So if I can't even practice Dharma, I can't meditate because of not eating for a few hours. What's it going to be like if I don't find food for hundreds of years? Which is, you know, one of the sufferings that the predators have to experience. So how fortunate I am not to have been born in the hungry ghost realm this time, but to have been born, received perfect human rebirth when I have every ability to practice every aspect of the Dharma. So then, since beginningless time, so many times I was born in the lower realms, in the hell and hungry ghost realms. But when I wasn't born in those 2 realms, then most of the time in psychic existence, I was born as an animal. So then you think of the different sufferings the animals undergo, you know, being prey for other animals. They're always living in fear, wondering if you're going to get attacked, killed, eaten, or you know, whether you're going to be abused by other animals. You know how the wasps sting like a grasshopper, paralyze it, and then put it in their nest, and then it gets, when the wasps larvae, as they're developing, they start eating the paralyzed grasshopper alive. I mean, like that. Or then think of all the horrible ways that people abuse animals, how animals get used for work, get, you know, raised for food, how they're killed. I mean, it's just, and how animals have no control over their life. They're really controlled and, you know, tortured by others. I mean, and they have no concept of where they are, really what the world is. I mean, it's extremely ignorant that way. You know, we look at animals, look at our pet cats or our pet rabbits or pet dogs, whatever we have, you know, and they just lying around. They get their food, and they lie around some more. Then they go for a walk. Then they come in and they lie around in the sun, you know. And you know, some people think, "Oh, look at that life. Oh, I wish I was a cat." You know, how great it'd be to be a dog. You know, you get looked after, you get fed. You know, there's a lot of cats and dogs who don't have that kind of life. But what we're judging, what we're going on, is the animal's body. We don't see the animal's mind. You know, how deeply ignorant it is, how stupid. You know, we think, oh, the animals, they're so intelligent. You know, oh, the pigs have the intelligence of a 3-year-old child. Well, I'm not going to be asking any 3-year-old child for advice, much less a pig. So, you know, but they're so intelligent. They're like, you know, and these birds, they can solve puzzles that 2-year-old children can. I mean, you see all this stuff. So Rinpoche said, if we could experience, he said a couple of different things. If we could experience having the mind of an animal for 30 seconds, all of a sudden your mind is gone. You've got the mind of an animal for 30 seconds, but somehow you're aware, you know? He said it would be so terrifying that one, you couldn't stop vomiting from fear. That's one time. Or another time he said, you would never sleep again. You would just spend the rest of your life, 24 hours a day, practicing Dharma, purifying your negative karma to try and make sure that you never get reborn as an animal. So that's better than hungry ghosts or the hell realms. The animals have less suffering than their other two lower realms. So, again, you think, how fortunate I was not born as an animal, but I was born, had this perfect human rebirth, in which I have every opportunity to practice Dharma. So then you think, so many times since the beginning of this time, nearly all my lives, I was reborn in the lower realms. But even when I wasn't, when I was reborn in the upper realms, I was reborn as one of those long life gods, as a sura or asura. And so you think of the different situations that they're in, the intense pleasure, how, and, and we think of ourselves as, if we're invited to some really cool place or some really good party or some incredible dinner or something like that, we can go to there, or we can stay home and meditate and practice and study Dharma books. I can do that later. I'm going to the party. So even that little temptation, we can't renounce. So, in the God realms where they're intoxicated by bliss, how impossible it will be to practice Dharma. So again, when you think of all different things that happen in the God realms, or in those in the form and formless realms, when they're deeply absorbed in concentration, there's no way to practice Dharma because you're kind of not awake. You're just in this trance. So many times I was born as a long life God without the opportunity to practice Dharma, without interest, without the wish to practice Dharma. But this time I was born, received perfect human rebirth. How fortunate I am. And so, okay, so you go through like how fortunate not to be in hell, hungry ghost, animal, long life God. Even when I was born as a human, but I was born at a time when the Dharma teachings didn't exist. So for perspective on that, so that's right. We have time to do this whole thing. A time when the Buddha, when there weren't teachings, a world system has 4 phases. You know this, right? There's a great eon of emptiness when there's kind of, this part of the universe or there's no physical matter. It's just subatomic particles and energy. Matter never goes out of existence. It just changes state. So there's a great eon of emptiness where the particular part of the universe, there's no planets, no galaxies, no solar system, no suns, no stars, no nothing. It's all subatomic. So then there's a great eon of much more detail in, other teachings, but in Gyatso's book. Then there's a period of formation or evolution where gradually the matter starts to coalesce, and gradually we see the formation of a world system, such as we see around us now. So now, then there's a great eon of relative stability. So, and that's what we're in now. So let me can I share my screen again? I don't have the ability. I'm co-host. Okay. Where is it? Sorry. You see that? So now this is our period we're abiding. So what Gyatso says, at the beginning of the period of abiding, the first humans are like gods. They're spontaneously born and have bodies of light. Surviving on bliss alone, they have a very long lifespan. It says they're like 80,000 years on that chart. Gradually, due to coarsening of their collective karma, these humans and those who follow experience the 5 degenerations. The average lifespan decreases, the times degenerate, food becomes scarce and of poor quality, violence and disharmony increase in families, between groups and between nations. The disturbing emotions of hatred, desire, and so on become stronger. People hold strongly to wrong views, such as denial or distorted versions of karmic cause and effect. People's bodies become gross, short in stature, ugly and weak, and their minds become feeble. So I can relate to that. I think I'm in this 5th degeneration. I think I've lost about 2 inches in height last 3 or 4 years, it seems. I'm like the incredible shrinking man. During this decline, there is a point when humans lose their godlike form and appear in bodies like our own, or more primitive forms. To my mind, Gyatso, this karmically caused degeneration of humanity from godlike forms to modern Homo sapiens does not contradict the observed facts of evolution. Although the ripening of karma is a main condition for the environment that we experience, it is not the only condition, and the material world cannot be said to be karma. Also, the physical and chemical activity of matter is not karma. If earthly life did begin in the hypothetical primordial soup of simple organic compounds, it's quite conceivable that through physical and chemical activity alone, primitive, non-sentient, reproducing life forms may have arisen. As these organisms diversified, some would have gone in the direction of becoming plants without mind, and others would have evolved towards sentience. From the Buddhist point of view, there would have been a time when the bodies of the latter became suitable supports for consciousness, and the minds of beings who had died from higher or lower realms would find suitable physical supports to indulge in their emerging from latency sensory desires, such as eating gross substances and sexual activity. So the seeds of these delusions are always in the mind, even in the godlike 80,000 life year-long human beings or pre-humans. The seeds of delusion are still there. With the combination of body and mind, the first truly animate creatures, sentient beings of the animal realm, would have appeared. I believe that humans, as we presently define ourselves, would have appeared with the emergence of the dominant Homo sapiens from the evolutionary line that gave rise to ape-like creatures that could be classified either as human or animal. For a while, some of the original godlike humans may have coexisted with humans having coarse bodies and minds like our own. I don't know. There probably aren't any godlike humans around these days, even though some of us may think we belong to that category. His Holiness the Dalai Lama once gave an interesting answer to the question, will computers ever become intelligent? His answer was something like, perhaps if computers evolve to the point where they're suitable supports for consciousness. In other words, we cannot create awareness newly, but we might be able to produce something in which a pre-existing mind stream may take up residence. I doubt it, but computer geeks had better watch out. He writes with a little gentle humor. The Abhidharma, you should invite him to give some talks. Venerable Gyatso, he's running a monastery in Australia, but he might be up for it. The Abhid, he was the leader of the first Mind and Life, first Light of the Path retreat in North Carolina, I think 2009. I think the first one that we did, he was the leader there. The Abhidharma texts say that when, due to the 5 degenerations, our newly evolved human society on this earth reaches its nadir, there will be death on a massive scale due to war, epidemics, or famine. It is said that our present society will be destroyed by weapons of war. Could be happening now. Shocked by the slaughter, the survivors will be inspired by Maitreya, the coming Buddha, to practice the fundamental morality of non-harmfulness, and things will improve. At that time, Maitreya will appear with a tall and handsome body. There he is over there. At that time, that will inspire faith in his teachings. He will not appear as a wheel-turning Buddha until much later, during the next period of 5 degenerations. So like a wheel-turning Buddha, like Shakyamuni. As a result of the collective practice of morality, the 5 degenerations will be reversed and the lifespan, again, will become very long. So you can see it going up and down on this chart. 10 is supposed to be the bottom, when the humans become really short and ugly, and the lifespan is that short, 10 years, and there is extreme amount of disharmony and violence. Then the 5 degenerations will begin all over again. On our earth, we're experiencing the very first of 20 lesser periods. So that's what this is indicating now. These periods of abiding, these on our earth, we're experiencing the very first of 20 lesser periods that occur during a period of abiding. This period of long descent from maximum to minimum lifespan will be followed by 18 cycles during which the lifespan increases to the maximum and then decreases again to the minimum. During the 20th lesser period, there will be a long increase from minimum to maximum, the attainment of which will mark the beginning of the period of destruction. So after this great eon of abiding or relative stability, then there's the great eon of degeneration or destruction. So and then after the period of destruction, then there's the great eon of a great eon of emptiness, like I started with. So then there's this nothing here, empty, and then gradually things start to form. Then there's the period of abiding, and then there's the destruction. So this is the evolution of a world system or a universe according to early Buddhist cosmology. Cessation of the period of abiding, so the end of this period that we've got on the screen here, coincides with the cessation of rebirth in the lowest hell, the attainment of peak human lifespan, and the beginning of the period of destruction. The inhabitants of our galaxy of worlds will be reborn in progressively higher realms in this galaxy, or if their karma for low rebirth has not yet expired, in the lower realms of other galaxies. So, this is not the only game in town. There are countless of these world systems in different stages of development, abiding, and destruction throughout infinite space. So, if we don't have the karma to be born in this one, we may have the karma to be born somewhere else. So, if we practice properly in this life, such that we create the cause for future perfect human rebirths, we don't have to wait for this particular world system, this galaxy that we're in. Well, in this world system, there are billions of galaxies. We can, so there are loads of other human realms in which we can be reborn. It doesn't have to be in this particular part of the universe. Eventually, the beings of our galaxy will all be at the second form realm level and above, and the period of destruction will end with the burning of the desire realm environments by a fire that leaves no ash or smoke. The next period of emptiness will then begin, and so on. So in this diagram, of the period of abiding in relation to our Earth, we're at the point during the first of the 20 intermediate eons or lesser periods when the average human lifespan is about 80 years. So it doesn't say actually 80 there. But it's, not near the bottom of those troughs. Many planets have evolution of life forms similar to what has occurred on Earth, but whether Buddhas appear to teach the Dharma or not is dependent upon the collective karma of the humans on the planet. That planet. Sometimes worlds can pass through all four great periods with no Buddha appearing, or just a few. The collective karma of the humans on our planet, however, is said to be extremely fortunate because during our period of abiding, 1,000 Buddhas will appear and teach the Dharma. So Guru Shakyamuni is the fourth, and Maitreya will be the fifth. The 1,000 wheel-turning Buddhas only appear during times of degeneration, when humans are actively seeking the cause of suffering, unlike the ascending times when things are getting better all the time. The first four to appear were Buddha Kakasunda, Buddha Kanakamuni, Buddha Kashyapa, Buddha Shakyamuni. The next will be Buddha Maitreya, who at present is said to be teaching in the Tushita Pure Land. So what this doesn't say is that and what he did say was when the human lifespan is decreasing, when we get to around 80 or 100 lifespan going down, that is when the Buddha can appear and give teachings. So that's, we're 2,500 years into that, in the period of Buddha Shakyamuni. And, in a few hundred or a couple more thousand, or what, I'm not sure exactly, it's not really clear. Some texts say the teachings will last 5,000 years. But when that's over, then it'll be a dark period again. There'll be no teachings of the Buddha anywhere. And then there'll be, vast, years and years, centuries, millennia of further degeneration. And then the lifespan till it gets to the very bottom, 10, and then lifespan will start increasing, but no Buddhas will appear. So if you're born anywhere on this chart, on the way down before the Buddha appeared, or on the way down after the Buddha's teachings finished, or any time on the way up, or then again on the way down, maybe the Buddha won't appear that time. So you can see that in terms of time, there's only a really tiny small window when the Buddha's teachings exist. So that's where we are now with perfect human rebirth. So we can see that it's an extremely fortunate time that we find ourselves in, when we have all these conditions to meet and practice the Dharma. So I didn't even finish on the perfect human rebirth. There's a lot more to it than just the 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses, but
we have a question, Dr. Nick, from Barbara.
Sure, please.
Hi, Dr. Nick. Thank you so much for your teaching.
You're welcome.
You were talking about the 10 richnesses.
Yep.
And the 5 heinous crimes.
Yep.
Can they not be purified?
Yes, there's no as Lama said, there's no negativity that can't be purified. And there's 3 negatives in that statement. But anything can be purified, but it's difficult to purify those because they're very heavy, and if they're not purified, then we have to experience the result. And you know how to purify 4 opponent powers, and practicing Vajrasattva, we have our little daily purification practice we do before going to bed each night. And, we have confession with the 35 Buddhas, this wonderful teaching by Geshe Jumpa Gyatso, Purification in Tibetan Buddhism, on the 35 Buddhas practice. And, we have many other ways to purify, studying, meditating on emptiness, circumambulating stupas, building stupas, making tsatsas, painting tankas, or commissioning holy objects to be made. And then to purify broken tantric vows, we have the Samaya Vajra, Damsik Dorji practice. So there are many, many methods for purification. And
so what I'm understanding you to say is those 5 heinous crimes are just really the heaviest negative karma and the most difficult to purify. Is that correct?
That's what's often said, but there are other teachings, like if you take teachings on guru devotion, they'll say the heaviest karma is getting angry and or disparaging your teacher. And then other teachings say that the heaviest karma is what they call abandoning the Dharma, just criticizing, saying I'm a Mahayanist, the Hinayana teachings are completely unnecessary. Or as I practice the Theravada, the Vajrayana teachings are just degenerate teachings, or the Mahayana teachings aren't authentic. I mean, there's this kind of sectarianism. So they'll say, to have that attitude, to hold that belief, to express that belief, is worse than destroying all the stupas in the universe, for example, you see. So there's a bit of a competition as to which is the most negative karma, depending on what day it is or what teaching you're taking. But these Samenga, these 5 negative actions without boundary are called that because if you created any of them in this life and they're not purified, then when this life finishes, you have no choice but to be born in one of the lower hells. But, everything can be purified.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? Okay, so I think we've come to the end. What's the next one called? In 3 weeks?
Looking, I know it says it ends with, like you're going to explain how we become a Buddha in one Saturday.
Okay, is enlightenment possible? Is that what it's called? Or?
What is a Buddha and how do I become one on March 5th?
Thank you, Venerable.
I'll try and find out before then. Okay, so sorry, these are all a bit all over the place, but that's what you get. So once again, thank you very much for having asked me to do this. It's an opportunity for me. And we've been discussing the teachings of the Buddha. We began with bodhicitta, so definitely created, big heap of merit. So visualizing that huge heap of merit, we dedicated. You think because of this merit, quickly reach enlightenment for the sole purpose of enlightening all sentient beings. So, we really dedicate all the merit we've created to the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Do I do this?
We'll do it.
Okay, go ahead.
This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. May my venerable Lama's life be firm, his white divine actions spread in the 10 directions. May the torch of the teachings of Losang always remain, dispelling the darkness of all beings in the 3 realms. Yidam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamiryat. Then you can lead us in dedication.
I have to warm up to this. Gewadi Yododa Lama Sangye Rugyone Roa Chiya Malupa De Sala Govajo Yanjo Senjo Rinpoche Maye Barange Gyochi Keva Nyamba Me Paya Goni Gondu Pelvajo Dozo Janshin Jangang Gyalwe Ten Zinkyong Pelwe Kunzo Do Poze Josum Guwe Lek Mondu Do Pa Dazo Du Je Gondu Shabten Jo Jiden Kande Pende Malupa Kanle Yunwe Sambel Yijino Kanden Sume Tenzin Yatsola So Dev So Tuje Lundu Yo Labanu Jose Te Roala Gyoa Kule Lebe Dinjeje Layang Samjin Cho Derik Susu Janla Kandin Dembe Kesha So Beloved teacher, leading your students toward wisdom and compassion, explaining through exacting discernment the steps of the graduated path. You are the unequal guide. Please live a long and stable life.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nick. Love the
Thank you,
Tibetan.
everybody.